Okay, if I put some notes down.
Some sort of notes.
No, we can do some doodling.
Yeah.
Right, I'm good to go. Notes.
Yeah.
Good to go.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome both to the people in the room and those of you who have dialed in from home. This is the IUA HR and Training Market Briefing to commemorate November's International Men's Day. Since the IUA HR and Training Committee's inception in 2018, our group have been active in addressing IUA members with HR-related issues relevant to our industry, including disability, gender pay, and mental health issues. As our work-life culture changes, we're aiming to focus on all that encompasses the new working culture in 2023. International Men's Day, which originated in Trinidad and Tobago back in 1992 to raise awareness of achievements and contributions to community and value with issues facing men globally. This is highlighted in the 6 pillars of International Men's Day: to promote positive male role models, to celebrate men's positive contributions to society, to focus on men's health and well-being, to highlight discrimination against men, to improve gender relations and promote gender equality, and to create a safer and better world. So in marking November's Men's Day, we welcome Neale Etheridge, who has had a successful career in the insurance market. No, I'll talk to you later.
P45's in the post, right? Okay, yeah, okay.
And is now a senior claims adjuster at Fidelis Insurance. And Neale will be introducing and chatting to our very special guest speaker, snooker legend, I'm a Celebrity contestant, DJ, and all-round interesting guy, Steve Davis, OBE. You will all have the opportunity to ask questions at the end of the session, and for those of you who are at home, you can use the Q&A buttons on screen. The event will be recorded and available for you to have a look at after. And I would just ask you all to make sure that your phones are off or on silent so that we can really enjoy the next half an hour. So with further ado, I will hand over to Neale.
Thank you very much, Fiona, for the warm welcome, and I hope I've got a job when I got to the office, so let's hope this goes well. Thank you. At today's market briefing event, we welcome Steve Davis, OBE, one of Britain's best-loved sportsmen. Snooker legend started 40 years ago when he first picked up a cue to play on the dining room table at his parents' South London home. He dominated the game in the 80s when he claimed 6 world championships at Sheffield, as well as capturing all the game's major titles on numerous occasions. His success continued into the 90s and noughties, and Steve has amassed 71 major titles, including 28 ranking titles during his career. He claimed his first televised 147, the first televised 147 in 1982. Yesterday saw the 182nd feat achieved by Judd Trump at the latest Scottish Masters tournament. Steve announced his retirement from professional snooker in 2016. Steve is acknowledged as one of the BBC's leading snooker pundits and commentators, where his love of the sport made him one of the most recognisable faces in Britain. In addition to this, he has a keen interest in poker and chess. He came 8th in I'm a Celebrity 2013, where Kian Egan from Westlife took the crown. Steve has presented the interesting alternative show on Phoenix FM in Essex, and his passion for music has translated into a number of DJ appearances, including appearing at Glastonbury. His autobiography, Interesting, was released in spring 2015. Please welcome Steve Davis.
Thank you.
He knows nothing about what's coming next, but
Thank
there's
you,
a
Neil.
number of.
Thank God for Wikipedia, Neil.
I know. Thank God for Wikipedia.
Really nice. That feels like that was. And you've actually gone through all of my speaking material now by saying all of that, so I've got nothing left in the tank.
Well, we'll try. We'll try. At what point in your career did you consider yourself a success?
Oh, well, I suppose winning my first ever major event, which was the UK Championship 1980. I'd sort of been a good junior player and turned professional mainly so I could play my heroes. There wasn't much money in the game back in 1978 when I turned professional. So it was purely for the love of it. I had no real idea what was going to happen. And then my life went strange because 2 years after turning professional, I won my first ever UK Championship. The following year in 1981, I won the World Championship. And sort of overnight, I became well known. And for the first couple of years after starting to win a lot, I went on a roll and I was winning everything. My life totally changed. I was like and everybody in the UK loved me. Well, some people liked me. But then things started to get very weird because like people started to get bored with the same person winning. And they put 2 and 2 together and thought if they were bored, that I must be boring. So it wasn't really my fault that the British public had a low attention span. And then David Vine would come on and he'd ask me questions about snooker. So I answered him about snooker and people said, there you go. All he does is talk about snooker. He must have had a charisma bypass operation. Like it was getting a problem. Like even my girlfriend at that time thought I was getting a bit boring. So I thought I nipped it in the bud. I took her out. I booked a nice romantic table for 2, which was a waste of time. She only potted 3 balls. And one of those was a plant, right? And they're lined up for the pocket. Anybody, my nan could have potted a plant, and they clap on the television for a plant. I beat a 5-1. We were back home in bed by 9 o'clock. It was a waste of a night. When I first found out I was boring, a guy came up to me and said, Steve, my brother's a big snooker fan, but he's been in an accident. He's going to be okay, but we need to wake him up as quick as possible. Could you do a tape for him? So I thought, that's nice. So I did the tape and it worked. After 5 minutes, he got out of bed, turned the tape off. So perhaps at that moment was when I thought I found out I was successful at the same time as my image was going down the pan. And I know I'm going off. That's fun. It got weird, but like you don't know what's going to happen to your life, right? This is International Men's Day. Men don't know what's going to happen to their lives. Right. So I just wanted to play snooker and I didn't know that it was going to be a TV. Next minute, you're well known and then you've got to deal with being well known, which is really strange and it's not for everybody. But it was so, and it got to a head when I'd walk in a bar and there'd be Alex Hurricane Higgins and Jimmy Whirlwind White, and they'd start laughing and saying, "There's Steve, no nickname Davis." Because in snooker, if you didn't have a nickname, you were nothing, and like preferably a weather forecast, like Hurricane Higgins, Jimmy Whirlwind, Tony Tornado Drago, James Typhoon Wattener, John Bit Miserable Clearing Up Later Parrot, right? I tried all these, but fortunately for me, at just the right moment when it was coming to a bit of a worrying head, Spitting Image came along and gave me a nickname and a personality and a puppet all rolled into one. So from then on, I wasn't boring. I was interested, and they weren't laughing then much. And I've got my puppet. My best mate Barry Hearn bought me my puppet on my 40th birthday, and that night I took it home, and my wife at the time didn't know because it was a surprise to me. So while she was getting ready for bed, I got the puppet and I put it in the bed. It's like a life-size torso, right? I put it in the bed, put the covers over the top, snuck down by the side of the bed, and she's come in the bed, got in the bed, pulled the covers back and screamed, right? And she said it was the best shag she'd ever had. Anyway, I've answered that question. Very popular. I became very successful. Isn't it? Putting a small ball in a slightly bigger hole with a pointy stick, and I became. How bizarre that you're like, just because you can put a small ball in a slightly bigger hole with a pointy stick, you become well known in the UK that you're on Spitting Image. Well, and now I'm here. So this sort of like, you know, they said smart casual, right? I don't know. I mean, I haven't got a clue. It said smart casual on my email, right? Which I don't know about that. It confuses me because like for 40 years of my life, I've worn a dress suit as my sports kit. So like, where does that leave me?
I suppose it's quite interesting then that you were named Sports Personality of the Year. To this day, the only snooker player to have won that.
I won Sports Personality of the Year. Me. Like the person who I mean, it wasn't an Olympic year. I think it was Red Rum and Torval and Dean with the other two in the running. But yeah, and so overnight, snooker became this massive thing in the 80s. But nobody could have foreseen what was going to happen. All down to, of course, the early era of, and obviously I'm not assuming that everybody in the room knows about the snooker. I mean, there's probably some people, you know, that haven't even got a clue who I used to be. But at one stage, it was Pot Black. And that was the weekly one frame fixer. And that was how we all watched snooker. And I didn't know at the time, but the person who signed off Pot Black and then apparently was still on the board when they decided to show snooker in its entirety from 1979 onwards, I think. The person who signed off Pot Black, who was head of BBC Sport at the time, was David Attenborough. So snooker's got a great deal of thanks, not let alone all the other things, to David Attenborough.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I remember Pot Black, and like so many people of my age and generation, watching it on a black and white portable TV in the spare room. On BBC Two, it got half an hour of coverage. It spanned over about 8 weeks. Yeah. And little did I know until later in life, it was probably all filmed in one day at Pebble Mill Studios.
In colour.
Because I think, if I remember rightly, in Willie Thorne's book, he alluded to the fact he'd gone past a betting shop who'd kind of put odds up and he'd backed Graham Miles at 40 to 1 and he got a payout and he knew the result because he'd been in the studios that day. That was I wish I could be like having the book from Back to the Future, right?
I had a mate in the snooker club who found out that it was all recorded in 3 days or something, and then he asked me who won it, and I told him, and he made a few quid that year. So the following year I told him the wrong winner. Just sort of redress the balance.
How do you think your success has helped improve the sport for other players?
I think in any sport, no one person's bigger than the sport, even if they are like godlike, like Ronnie O'Sullivan, who is an amazing sports personality and character, and maybe the biggest genius we've ever had in snooker. Yes, that can attract people to the sport. It can make people start say, I want to do that. But I think generally the thing has to survive on its own. So if something's not going to be popular, if it doesn't work on TV or as a sport, then it doesn't matter. But so I think all you can do is be a good pro, really. Do your job, try and be respectful to the game. And that didn't seem to be too much of a problem. Yeah, and hopefully sort of try and not come out with anything too stupid in interviews like this.
So you've obviously inspired many people, probably pick up a cue. Who inspired you?
My father was sort of like, I could have been a darts player.
I wonder what nickname you'd have had.
I don't know, but my father was a massive darts fan, used to play for his league teams back in the 60s, and he got dartitis, the same thing that Eric Bristow got, where you just can't let go. It happens in what you consider to be still ball games or games where you've got to make the movement. So it would be snooker, golf, bowls, maybe darts, all these things. You have a problem, sort of some type of blank block where you. So the same as Eric Bristow, Patsy Fagan was a snooker player, had the same thing, but he couldn't let go of the last dart. He tried throwing left-handed, which is never going to work. It's not like snooker; it's a different thing. And then he took up snooker. But if he'd have not got dartitis, he may not have taken up snooker, and I may have had a big beer gut.
You can slim Steve Davis, surely.
Yeah, Romford Slim.
Yeah, Super Del.
I don't know. Yeah, who'd have known? That's a different world. Obviously, the darts players now are much more athletic. They're starting to pay the price a bit more now, I think. Yeah.
What lesson have you learned that would have most benefited a 20-year-old Steve Davis?
Questions. What lesson? What
lesson?
This is not planned, by the way.
What lesson have you learned that would have most benefited a 20-year-old Steve Davis?
To relax in your own skin a bit more. I think I was really lucky that, because I was really shy, like, you know, as a kid, but I think when you're younger, you're much more self-conscious about things. And as I've got older, I've realized you might as well have a bit of fun, as long as you don't disrespect anybody, and to actually enjoy yourself on the planet more than maybe I did actually in the 80s. I mean, I did my job, but I probably was quite sort of shy and reserved a bit, and maybe a little bit more uncomfortable around people. But I learned my trade to sort of be an entertainer, doing snooker exhibitions and being in centre stage. But I think I probably could have been relaxed a bit more off the table. And I think, you know, I wouldn't say work hard, play hard, but I certainly probably could have enjoyed myself more without being guilty about enjoying myself.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the big problems you have if you're involved in something like golf or snooker is you've got to practice to keep up your standard, and that becomes like a guilt trip. So every day you've got to do your practice, but actually I'm not too sure it really matters. As long as you do a certain amount, quality hours, you could then relax and enjoy yourself afterwards. I'm not talking about partying at Glastonbury, that's what I'm doing now. But
when you're in your pomp, then how much time would you spend a day relentlessly practicing? Typically. Well,
it wouldn't be hard work, because it was something I wanted to do. But I'd probably be in a snooker club practicing for, say, 4 or 5 hours a day.
By your solely?
No, sometimes against somebody else, sparring. But you've got to do a certain amount, because it's all muscle memory. So all you're doing is doing this until it's so automatic that you don't have a problem when it comes to playing in competition. So you can then think about the match, and this takes care of itself. That's what you have to do. So that's why the golfers, you know, where you spend so much time practicing. But you've got to have the talent in the first place. That's the problem. It doesn't matter that 10,000 hours practice. I think it's proven. If somebody who's got no talent practices for 10,000 hours, they're still going to be crap. Guaranteed. Yes.
For the benefit of the room and those online, so yesterday, Judd Trump got the 182nd maximum break, which I think is going to get him, or he stands him in good stead for £5,000. And I remember back in the 90s when Jimmy White was consistently losing Jimmy White was consistently losing Stephen Hendry. He once picked up £147,000 for a maximum break, and he'd pick up the runners-up check, and I think he ended up with trousering more money than Stephen Hendry.
Yes.
Would you like to tell the audience in 1982 what you received in the Larder Classic?
Yeah, well, I the first ever, it's one of the few things that as a record that can't be taken away from me. Not that I'm that bothered about records and awards and all of that, but
Till Hendry came.
Yes. But making the first ever televised 147 break in the Larder Cars Classic in 1982 was a something of a milestone. It's sort of the equivalent of snooker's like 4-minute mile. The tournament beforehand, because there had never been one made and televised, they'd already offered £100,000 for a 147 break. The tournament after the Larder Cars Classic, they'd already offered £60,000. But I made it in the Larder Cars Classic, which the prize was a Larder car.
No financial.
No, just the car.
Right.
And at the time, at the time I had a Porsche. the insurance on my Porsche in 1982, I was under 25, male sports personality on the TV. The insurance on my Porsche was £2,500 back in 82. £2,500. A Lada car retailed at £2,499. The irony was for that, I made it against John Spencer, a great snooker player from the 70s and played a little bit in the 80s. I made it against John Spencer. In the 70s, John Spencer had made a 147 break in a televised event, but the cameramen were on a tea break. And I made it against him. So I don't know how he felt about that. But he shook my hand. It wasn't nice.
And I think Dennis makes the joke, if you'd missed the final black, they'd have given you two
Two of them,
lots.
yeah. So then the general question, it's funny what people's questions are. What did you do with it? My parents at the time had a pretty crappy car, so I gave it to them because I wasn't going to be seen dead driving it. So, and then for the publicity photograph, I remember putting 2 paper bags over my head just in case one split. And then they sold it to some people in the next street, and two months later it got stolen.
Wow.
So somebody in the Plumstead area was stealing Ladas. Like, what type of credibility has a thief got?
He's Plumstead, though.
What's Plumstead? Yeah.
So all these players nowadays come on to some fancy music of choice.
Yeah.
What would if you were playing the game now that we've got other music that's probably taking your fancy, what would you come out to as a pumping tune to get
well, it's a hard one. I've slightly sort of musically, I'm not exactly going to go down the road of playing Happy or the Superman theme tune. I did try some French progressive jazz rock. It didn't seem to work well with the Smoke and the Ice. They didn't blend well together. But obviously, I suppose it would be a natural thing to come out to, for me, possibly, if I was to make a comeback, which I'm not, to Snooker Loopy, that 1986 classic by Chas and Dave. And there may be some people in the room, I don't know, I'm not assuming everybody knows Snooker Loopy, but it got to number 6 you can look it up online. We got to number 6 in the charts. The week we'd have been higher if it wasn't for the Chicken song that was out exactly the same. It's bad timing. But we were at number 6 the week it got to number 6. And that week, I looked it up, we were ahead of George Benson, Whitney Houston, and Madonna.
Wow.
Now, how do you think they felt? like you're looking at a pop star. I mean, I used to have underwear thrown at me back in the 80s. Right. I mean, it was incontinence pads, mainly incontinence pads. A lot of grannies were watching, but at least it was underwear. What a world I've lived in. It's really weird. I've been fortunate enough to have a bizarre world. And it's like, even this is bizarre, isn't it? But still great and a laugh, maybe. I don't know.
Do you think the fact that the success of the song, and I know that Barry Hearn had everyone in his camp at the time, the Matchroom mob, and you were all doing all these advertising, aftershave and whatever else you guys were doing, and he had everyone sewn up apart from Stephen Hendry, who was coming along later. Do you think the success of the song was down to the fact that there was such a boom in the 80s? I'll only mention the 85 final because 18.5 million people watched it, which is still a record today. I won't talk about what happened. But do you think that's what sort of helped the song? I know Chas and Dave were great writers and had hits anyway. But
it was Barry Hearn's idea because he'd seen what Chas and Dave had done with Ozzy Ardiles and the Tottenham. And he went, oh, we could do a snooker one. And he approached Chas and Dave. And then I remember, he phoned me up, we got this great pop song. I thought, oh, no. But as it turned out, it was so catchy that, and you look it up, because he's got the rest of the song. But it was just another thing that happened. Like at that time, things were like sports personality. Who would have thought a snooker player was going to get sports personality of the year? I mean, back in the 80s, like there was a waxwork dummy of me in Madame Tussauds. Like, I'm not in there now. I've been melted down for 2 of Steve Redgrave's oars. I was in there. I was in Madame Tussauds. What? I met Pele. He was having his waxwork dummy, and he probably thought, oh, I was this. But I met Pele back in the. I met so many people back in the 80s, heroes that I would never have met otherwise. I met George Best, like, what a legend. Shook hands with Muhammad Ali at Sports Person. I was given out once at a charity cricket game by Gary Sobers, Sir Gary Sobers. I mean, I was bowled. He was like the celebrity umpire. I was bowled middle stump, but he still went like that. And I bowed and walked off. And my greatest claim to fame of doing stupid things with other sporting celebrities was lucky enough to play at Wembley prior to the cup final, when 22 celebs took to the field to play 7.5 minutes each end as a sort of warm-up for the punters at Wembley. I played football in Wembley, and 7.5 minutes each end, right? I was on the right wing for the first half, and then after 7.5 minutes, I was knackered because I was a snooker player. Lloyd Hannigan, a boxer, was our goalkeeper. He was fit as a butcher's dog. I was knackered. He was 4 foot nothing. I was 6 foot. It was a tactical mistake by our manager. I should have been in goal. He should have been running down the right wing. Second half, I went in goal. And my centre half was Bobby Moore. And I knew him a bit, Bobby, but I totally mugged myself off in his office, effectively. The other team got a corner. And most of the action had been up the other end because we had Bobby Moore in our team. But they got a freak corner. And so Bobby Moore was standing at the near post. And I went and stood with him because I knew him. And I would get a bit lonely second half, right? And he said to me, Steve, you go to the back post because I've got the near post covered. And I said to Bobby Moore, are you sure?
It's incredible. I can think of 1 or 2 embarrassing moments that I've seen in snooker. Most embarrassing moment for you?
Most embarrassing, the most embarrassing moment me you may not have seen, which was potting yellow to pink, and I was just about to pot the black when the referee started coughing and saying Steve, and I looked at the scoreboard and I was 8 points behind. Oh no. So I cleared all the balls up to the pink, basically to lose, without realising I needed a snooker. You'd have to know that, but that was in front of 1,500 people. So I sort of like, international men's. If you make a mistake, you've got to try and get yourself out of it. So I walked out to go to the toilet to recover my thoughts, and grabbed a calculator from the press room and walked in. Sort of diffused the moment a bit.
Your final master success, because you had 3,
yes,
was 1997 against Ronnie O'Sullivan,
I
think you were 6-2 and 8-4 down, if I remember correctly, in that final. Something happened in that match, didn't it?
Yeah, I was. Well, fortunately for me, one of my greatest ever wins was beating Ronnie O'Sullivan, who by 1997 was a real force in the game, and I certainly wasn't by then. I'd started to sort of slip down the rankings and really struggling to sort of, get any type of game together. And all of a sudden, a little purple patch, got to the final, played Ronnie O'Sullivan. He's obviously the favourite. He was buzzing at the time. He just made his first 147 break in 5 minutes and 20 seconds at the Crucible. Yeah. It used to take Terry Griffiths that long to break off. And he was just like this god who could just do these things like right-handed, left-handed, round the back of his neck. He's just incredible, right? Next week I'm playing Ronnie. So I've got, I've done well to get to the final. I'm 3-1 behind. I miss a shot and I walk back to my seat. And as I'm walking back to my seat, I hear a few wolf whistles. And I see out the corner of my eye, even though I'm walking back to my seat, I see somebody sort of jump over the hoardings. and it's a woman's going to streak, so she takes her jacket off and she's bouncing around all over the place. And I didn't even, because I was so involved in my match and I was struggling. I didn't even see her face, right? And then they took her off. But it sort of diffused the moment there, and I got back to level par, and I ended up from 8-4 behind, beating Ronnie O'Sullivan 1-6 on the trot. To still to this day, one of my greatest ever performances, because it's nice to do something when you're not expected to. So I was past my sell-by date, but I still sort of, got a bit of got the old form back together. That was one of my best ever moments, I feel.
So my dad first took me to the Masters back in 1982, and now I take him to the Masters at Ali Pali, and obviously it was the Wembley Conference Centre, which had like, I don't know, nearly 2,000, 1,800 capacity, something like that, which was incredible. Are you in the camp for the Crucible to remain sort of, it's part of the heritage and it stays there, even though there's half the capacity at the Crucible compared to the likes of there, or indeed Ali Pali as it's growing now?
Well, I don't think you should throw away your history lightly. So it would be like sort of Wimbledon saying we need to get a bigger place and taking the Wimbledon away from Wimbledon. And so, the Crucible Theatre is amazing. I spent a year of my life in Sheffield, I reckon, over a year of my life in Sheffield. It's a great place, and 900 capacity is not a lot, but it's such an amazing venue that I think to take it somewhere else wouldn't be right. So for me, that doesn't matter. It works well on TV, and I think all the time that BBC are covering snooker, and all the time that Barry Hearn is involved in promoting snooker with World Snooker, I don't think it will move from the Crucible. There is some talk about making Crucible bigger or something along that line. Maybe that would work, but it's a great venue. I think it's our best venue in some ways. Although, if you get a chance to go to Ali Pali for the Masters, what an amazing job they're doing there now. 2,000 seats, and when they all walk down the stairs and everybody stands up, it's quite incredible.
Why the jungle in 2013?
Why did I go in the jungle? Shed load of money. It's a piece of cake. It's like Centre Parks without food. They look after you. It's health and safety that, right? So we know full well that any alligators, it doesn't matter what size they are. I've got elastic bands around there, but we know that. Everything's health and safety that, but it's still great fun. If you've got a phobia, you might have a bit of problems. But I got away with it. I didn't have to eat anything. Unfortunately for me, I didn't get voted in to do trials because Joey Essex was in my year. So Joey Essex was being voted to do everything, and he sort of took the heat off us all. So we had a great time in there. But you do look. I mean, they give you no food. It's just been on the telly. They give you no. They don't give you any secret food. So in 20 days, I lost 16 pounds.
That you didn't need to lose.
I didn't really not as much. No. So I did it, and but it was great fun. I'm not saying it, apparently businesses can hire it out because they also. So the Germans and the Italians do a similar thing, and this company over there that's run by, I think, Dr. Bob, the other guy that's he's the guy that it's his company that runs it. So they sell it all around the world to places. So he does the thing, and he's sorted out this diet where you get you can live on rice and beans for a certain amount of time, and it's okay. And you do not get any food. But the most fun of being in I'm a Celebrity was that when I came out, all of a sudden the questions people may ask you, my general questions would have been, what was Alex Higgins like? I'm not saying you have to write it down. Right. What's Jimmy White like? What's Ronnie O'Sullivan like? The real sort of superstars. And that would be the question people will ask you. But for a couple of weeks after coming out of the jungle, the question people asked me was, is Joey Essex really that thick? And I didn't know what to answer because I don't know. Even having spent time with him, I don't know. I think it's not as clear cut as you think, right? I don't know if you follow Joey's career or something, but this is why I don't know, because we're in the jungle and we're starving hungry one morning and we're fantasizing over food. And I went, what I'd do for some toast and butter and Marmite. And he went to me, oh, we don't have butter in our house. We have, I can't believe it's not butter. So I went, oh, right. And 2 days later, he came up to me, he said, you do know that's not really butter, don't you? So I don't know who's having who over. I think he's having the last laugh.
And would you like to stay? Obvious question.
Stay longer.
Stay longer. Yeah.
No.
You've done your part.
In the jungle thing, the jungle thing is it's a really fun thing to do, but you don't need to stay in to the end. But yeah, unless you've got an ego where you want to win it. But yeah, no, it's just a laugh. It's so much fun. I had to sing Snooker Loopy in there on the pub night.
How do you bridge the gap between your current career and snooker? So how do you kind of what do you do?
My current career. Well, I don't know if I don't even know what I am now. I've got no idea.
So, I mean, you're on the BBC. You're obviously BBC punditry team doing that. So what?
Yeah, talking about the game's far easier than playing it. And it's great fun being part of the BBC presentation team. That's great. That's great to do. My other life's gone very strange. Is I've got involved in music stuff, and I'm now a DJ. And apparently my DJ name is DJ Thunder Muscle. I don't think it really fits. But so what happened was I was doing a radio show with a mate of mine, a musician called Carver's Tarabi on Phoenix FM, Brentwood and Billericay's local community station. And out of the blue, somebody said, there's a new tap room in Bethnal Green called the Red Church Brewery. They got a tap room, and the guy who runs it likes a bit of music. He's got a sound system in it. Do you want to come up and play some music? Don't have to make them dance, just play some music, just background. So we went up there, started doing that. And then I think what must have happened is that two lads that ran something called Block Weekend, which is a sort of techno festival that was around, that was being it was held in Minehead in Butlins, said, would you like to come down and DJ in one part of it? Not necessarily playing any techno music, but just as a sort of balance. So we did it, and BBC iPlayer did a feature on it, and they ran it during the World Championship in April, and it got quite a number of hits. And all of a sudden the phone rang, and it was Glastonbury saying, would you like to DJ at Glastonbury? So our second ever DJ appearance was at Glastonbury. Overnight, like it was just like, and we thought, we shouldn't really do it because like there's a load of DJs have paid their dues, and they went, and we were DJing. I don't know, I was so nervous. I've never been so nervous in my life. DJing to a 500 capacity tent of people all already drunk on the Thursday, getting ready for. It was so exciting. So now I've got this weird other life, which is DJing and music stuff, and nobody ever told me I was going to do that. That wasn't fair. I didn't know that was going to happen. I'd only prepared for snooker.
Shall we open it to the floor for anybody who has any? Oh look, there's a man in the front row.
Oh yes. Oh, Hugh. Sorry, Hugh. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Steve, you mentioned earlier a little bit about anxiety before a snooker match, big snooker match. You just mentioned it there before the Glastonbury appearance. So I wondered how you dealt with that pressure and the nerves before an event, particularly where obviously steady hand is very helpful.
Yeah.
And if your methods to do so changed over time. Looking at Glastonbury more recently.
Well, what I would say, what I would say about anxiety and nerves when you're trying to perform in any environment is that I think experience counts for something, but it actually is not everything. It's whether or not you can cope with it in the moment, and sometimes not everybody can do that. And I don't know how you change that if you have a problem with getting too nervous for the performance you've got to do. I think I was very lucky that I was naturally gifted in having a temperament that could handle that. If you haven't, well, that's the world of sports psychologists and help in that area to sort of improve. But the other thing is that the experience doesn't count for much as you get older, because it gets harder to cope with pressure and nerves as you get older, even though you would think you'd have the experience. But that may be different things. So perhaps talking and chatting to people may be easier, but the actual physical performance of something gets harder because your body doesn't like it as much. Your body doesn't like the tension. So you sort of shy away from it a bit. But I think that's just, you know, that's a circle of life to some degree. And yeah, to that degree, I mean, the question people say is, oh, you're older now, but it's not a physical game, snooker. Why can't you still play? And I always felt, well, like, you know, how to explain that to somebody who didn't really understand. You know, they go, is it your eyesight? You go, well, it's not just your eyesight. Your body's sort of slowly falling to pieces as a piece of meat. And basically, you're just slowly going off. And I don't know at what age you start to go off, but we are slowly we're basically just deteriorating, right? So positive, yeah, positive. This is positive thinking, right? So I think demotivational speaking is the way forward. So there's no way out of it. It's just, it's not depressed. It's just the way it is. You could get depressed about it or not, and then what happens is you have your first fall, and then 2 falls after that, they put you in a home. So there's nothing to look forward to, is there? But for the time being, in the 80s, when I was a young piece of meat, that was so easy to do. I'd be nervous beforehand, embrace the nerves. You've got to be nervous beforehand. But then once the action started and you have something to think about, you just go onto autopilot. And that's a bit like maybe a driving test or an exam. I don't know about job interview. I never had a job interview to know what that's like. I mean, I don't really want one. They seem like they're horrible things. Although apparently now they're being done online. So basically an AI interview is another problem. Sort of like this, yeah. I mean, there's probably an AI judging this chat. But I would say that I think this has been going since 2018 with a couple of quite years. So it is quite an honour to be 4th choice guest speaker for this for this day. That's nice. Yes, sir.
Get a little bit of a link to where we are.
Of course, yes. I
Obviously, insurance is all about risk and reward.
Yeah.
What was your approach as a smooth player for that sort of, when it came to sort of, you know, how much risk were you prepared to take? You want to know, did you see yourself as a bit of a risk taker when you got to the table?
Lived on the edge, mate. My image wasn't that. The way I played snooker wasn't that. And I grew up learning my trade from the previous generation. And that particular game, I mean, maybe similar to the golfing world. And let's take Nick Faldo as an example. Nick Faldo was this brilliant machine who played, I'm probably simplifying things, but he played par golf. Yeah, I mean, everybody knows that he played, you know, middle of the green, par it, and he won with pars. But now I think as the standard of golf got better, they've got to go for the flag. They've got to be more risk taking. Same as happened to snooker. So there was a time when you could sort of not, you could wait for the other person to make the mistakes, and if you were good enough, then you mopped up the tears. But you didn't have to make the first decision. That was, I think, the way it was played. And then the period of time I played in, I feel as if I was better than most of the players, if not all of them. So I could let them make mistakes. So I didn't have to take risks. Then as the 90s came along, Stephen Hendry pushed the bar up in the modern day game. And instead of it going, that's a difficult shot, a 50-50, I'll leave it. He went, that's a difficult shot, but if I get that, I might win there and then. But if I miss it, I may not lose. So it's in my favour to go for the 50-50 shots. That's something I'd never really considered. So I then had to start to teach myself new tricks in the 90s, but I'd learned my trade in the 80s, and I didn't like the way it didn't sit as nicely with me. So in the business world, if you're sort of, you know, you're safe in your environment and a new breed comes along, that must be quite tough to have to move with the times. But I think you need to try to move with the times. But you might not like it because you've had sort of set ways. But so, yeah, being able to change, that's tough. Yeah. So I then slowly, you know, Stephen Hendry came along, to, you know, nicked all my ranking points, all my prize money, all my sweets, and became the best player of that. And then it's moved on again. So nothing ever stays the same. but you think at the time you're the best thing that's never going to be beaten. So I used to think I was the best thing since sliced bread in the game, and for a while actually, maybe sort of quite poignant in the way that the Queen, bless her, has passed away. But I just got glad, and there was a time. This is a true story, right? So I was the best player in the game back in '88. I was buzzing, I was flying, and the Queen of England confirmed that I was the best thing in snooker. It's a true story. So I get awarded the MBE for services to snooker back in '88. And I don't know your views on the whole honours system, but I was proud for snooker because it got recognition for a game that was a pastime. So I don't actually know if you know what happens when you go up the Palace for. Didn't think so, but so you get put in a big room. You get put in a big room with a load of and this posh guy comes in and he says, "What we do? Right, okay, we'll have the knighthoods at the front, get form a queue, CBEs, OBEs, and then all the crud at the back." And it's when it's your turn, you're gonna turn, you're gonna bow. The Queen will be in front of you. You'll take 2 steps forward, she'll pin on your medal, and then she may or may not say something to you, as is her wont, but you'll know as you're shaking hands, you'll know it's time to leave because she'll gently push you away. Nobody will see the push, but you'll feel the push. That's your cue to go back. Next one. This was on a Monday morning. I just won the Rothmans Grand Prix. I beat Dean Reynolds in the final 10-0. I was brilliant, he was shit. But everybody was shit because I was so brilliant. And the Queen confirmed it. This is on my kid's life, this happened, right? It's my turn, I go like this, I bow, I take 2 steps forward, she pins on my MBE, and all of a sudden, as we're shaking hands, she spoke to me. Doesn't speak to everybody, she spoke to me. She said, "Tell me, we had to go out of the country at the weekend, did you win the final?" I thought, shit, the Queen mighty snooker. I went, "Yes, ma'am." She went, "Well done, push." I'm off down to my snooker club to tell everybody the Queen watches me play snooker, and she's just confirmed I'm the best thing in the game. 5 years later, I get awarded the OBE. It's like an upgrade. No idea what the difference was. I was a bit further up the queue. But by now, as I've mentioned, Stephen Hendry's come on the scene. Tournaments, prize money, everything. He's raised the bar. And I'm no longer the best thing in the game. And once again, on my kid's life, the Queen confirmed it. It's my turn. I bow 2 steps forward. She pins on my OBE. And once again, as we're shaking hands, she spoke to me. She said, "Tell me, do you still play?" And that was sort of effectively the end of my career. Until I turned up here.
We're just elongating it.
Yes, of course.
Any other questions?
Sorry, I do apologise. Yeah.
John?
Yes, you mentioned beating Gary Sobers.
Yeah.
Best. Did you have to introduce yourself to them? And what did you say?
Oh, well, obviously Pele wasn't really. I don't know, because you never know who sort of has spent time in the UK and has watched snooker. And every now and again, you're surprised. And obviously, a little while back, a long time ago, at one stage, it looked like at the Masters in London, maybe late 80s, we had word that Paul Newman wanted to come along to the Masters. But of course, Paul Newman had been in the original film, The Hustler. So maybe that wasn't too much of a leap of faith. But every now and again, you get a name from abroad who actually is a snooker fan. Happened to a musician that I really admire from the 70s, who turned out he was a big music fan. I brought him to the Crucible. So I can't remember if Pele knew. He probably knew who I was. I don't think Muhammad Ali did. But yeah, Gary Sobers, maybe, yeah. But it's really nice when people know from other sports, but it depends probably how long they spent in the UK, really. Yeah, George, he was lovely. Yeah, he was a lovely guy. It's, obviously, the worse for wear sometimes, but even so, I think he probably loved the game of snooker. Actually, I think I've helped him play. You can, a lot of people in sport can they've got the coordination, so that's, yeah. We laughed.
Steve, how
Yes.
do you cope with having so many highs to not getting those anymore?
Oh,
You seem like a really
Yeah,
happy
yeah.
person. That adrenaline you must have had to not have it anymore. How did you cope with that?
well, there's that is, I think, the biggest problem for sports people generally, especially in a lot of athletic sports, where their lifespan as a sport in that sport will be pretty short. So maybe football, cricket, gymnastics, whatever it is, you've got all this buzz. You've got the adrenaline buzz is amazing. You become a bit of a adrenaline junkie. The next minute is you retire, and you have to deal with that. And I think that's quite difficult. But that's the price you pay. You've had so much fun, in your life for that other people have maybe not had that fun, would love to be in your cave. You have to swallow it. You have to take it. And it's tough because it seems like nothing else is going to replace that. So therefore you can go off the rails, B, you could, get depressed, and I don't know any tricks to help you. Fortunately for me, when I did retire, even though I retired probably too late, I could have retired earlier, but I played on for my father a bit because it was his hobby, and as he was in ill health, it was sort of fun for him to watch my progress. But I was lucky enough that after that was sort of doing DJing things and having a laugh doing that. So sort of a certain buzz doing that. But I do know there's certain players in snooker that have retired and not really ever been so happy and mentally active. And Stephen Hendry made a comeback recently because I think he missed it. And it does seem like the case that a lot of boxers decide to make comebacks when maybe they shouldn't. I mean, maybe it's financial, but I think it's more the case they just want that thing back in their life again. There's no way out of it, but you have had the fun, so maybe you have to pay the price. Yes, sir. Right.
I was actually going to ask you that question in the next bit would be, did you really consciously reinvent yourself along the way? Were you advised?
No, yeah. I didn't try and reinvent myself. It just obviously moving into the BBC stuff was a sort of way of keeping involved in the game, but it just happened. Just one door closed, another door open. But for me, it was no. I just think it was, you're just lucky if you've got other things you can do. But when Stephen Hendry came along and started to become the dominant force, I'd had all my own way in the 90s, and then in the 80s, and then in the 90s, Stephen Hendry became the dominant force, and I really struggled in the 90s. I really felt like I'd failed, which was weird because I wasn't totally losing, but I just felt like, what is it I'm doing wrong that I wasn't doing wrong then? It wasn't me. It was the fact that the game had moved on and Stephen Hendry was great, but it was tough to deal with somebody else coming along and taking that away. But once again, you have to suffer it, because unless you think you're going to be number one or the best in whatever area forever, it never happens. There's always somebody else comes along. You just have to take it on the chin. But maybe that would be the thing. We're talking about what would be the thing that you would tell your 20-year-old self. Maybe to enjoy it while it's happening, realizing somewhere down the line it may not be as easy as it is now, and maybe coming to terms with that would help you to have more longevity. So maybe if you knew it was going to be that you weren't going to be the best, well, it's a weird thing to sort of be the best, but looking further afield to the time when you're not the best is maybe not the best. I mean, do you think I'm interesting? No, you're right.
Nigel, you had a question?
Yeah, Nigel, get me out of trouble here. I don't play at all. No, I stopped playing snooker. I retired in 2016, and I'd been playing for a while, as I said, because I felt like I needed to play for my father. I was ready to retire. So the moment I stopped playing, there was no reason to play. I wasn't doing it for fun. My fun was preparing for the events. So overnight, I mentally stopped being a snooker player, other than the commentary things. So then I put my cue away, and it could just as easily be growing tomatoes now. No, my father had a table, and I took the table's been taken out, but it's just a storeroom, because and when on the road to retiring, somewhere down the line, when I was hitting the ball towards the pocket, they started hitting the rubber bits on the side and bouncing and staying on the table, which is something that wasn't happening at one stage. They were going in the holes. So I started to, I think that it was the right time to retire when I started wobbling them in the jaws and going, oh, that looks quite nice. So that was the time to stop. No, so I don't, because I don't play now. Because if I try and play now, there's no point. They all go, they wobble, they hit the rubber bits. They don't go in the holes in the corner anymore. It's like the cue. There's something wrong with the cue, I think. I had my first ball the other day. No, didn't I?
Okay, I'm conscious of time,
Oh, sorry.
and
It's 1 o'clock.
I'm really sorry to have to wrap things up because it's been absolutely interesting. Oh,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
It's not questions, but obviously about the event today. This one is from a chap called Stephen Davis, who works for the IUA.
Yes. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah.
Sorry, Stephen.
I'm constantly asked if my name is like the snooker player. I wondered if Steve had had similar experiences of perhaps being asked if his name was like that claims adjuster.
Stephen. Stephen Davis, who you may not have heard. I'm not too sure you're not mic'd up, but Stephen. Yes, I do apologise for having. I don't know how old you are, but firstly, if you're of a certain youth, then it's your parents to blame, right? Because they should never have. Yeah, they've caused you loads of anxiety. Yeah, all of this, but. The strangest thing I've had about my name recently was on Twitter, because there's out of the blue, I started to get notifications, because obviously if you're well known, you look yourself up and you're forever looking to see what people are saying about you. And all of a sudden I looked on my Twitter feed, it was like, you arsehole, you get lost, you and I looked at it, and it's this guy, this Twitter account, and he had Shrewsbury Town Football Club, right? And it turned out that the manager of Shrewsbury Town was Steve Davis. And this Shrewsbury Town football fan was slagging me off for his manager's bad performances. And I thought, it's nice to see the Shrewsbury Town football fans have got their finger on the pulse. So my Twitter handle is Steve Snooker. I mean, there's a giveaway. Sure. But anyway, Stephen, I do apologize. Just a small point, just to keep there's no smoke fire on the interesting thing is, my birth certificate is Steve Davis. I'm not even a Stephen. I do apologise. PH or VE. I'm neither.
I have
one more.
This is from Steve Brown. Is it
Steve,
Steve, all the questions
got a
come from
Stevie
Steve.
thing.
I'm going to be singing the John Leach Soul Show on Radio.
Wow. Yeah.
In the early 90s, and I won a signed cue from you that I still use.
Oh, Steve, yes, I did. I filled in for John Leach down on Essex Radio, for a week, and you won I gave a signed snooker cue away. Well, what can I say? But John Leach was clever. That was a clever move by John Leach to get me to cover for him for the week while he went in hospital. Because if he'd have got another DJ presenter who was better than him, he might have been out of a job. So what he did, he got somebody who couldn't even do presenting and radio. So it was good fun. That was my first ever week of DJ on Essex Radio. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God. Ah, we laughed.
I think we could probably speak or listen to you.
Oh, thank you.
All afternoon, but unfortunately, the time has come to thank you so much for your giving up your time and coming and speaking today. And for those online, thank you very much for tuning in, and for people in the room, I think we'll give you a nice warm round. I'm out of a job.
Terrific. Right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.